Yeah. Okay, cool. By way of introduction, Christopher Kainz. I work for Aurora since 2019, as Sebastian mentioned. I look after France and 5 other countries. I also look after our strategy projects, and the last thing that I do is product development across Europe. Um, Today I'm going to talk about the French market, which is really interesting and really unique. So I'm really excited to talk about it. And I'm going to cover 3 main areas. So first of all, I'm going to give you a quick introduction to Aurora and also the different legal and regulatory frameworks in Europe. The second thing that I'm going to do is actually talk about the French pilot program. So the framework of it and the whole context around it. And then finally, I'm going to go into a little bit more detail around the educational program that the French authorities have set up for this pilot program. Yeah. Can I use this here? So by way of introduction, Aurora, we're a global leader in cannabis, in the production, cultivation, and manufacturing. Globally, we have 3 segments, but in Europe, we're only present in the medical cannabis segment due to the legal and regulatory framework in Europe. Our mission in Europe is to really support all of the stakeholders, but specifically patients, to have access to high quality cannabis. We are present currently in 10 different countries. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail here, but you can see that we're already pretty widely present across Europe whenever the legal and regulatory frameworks allow for that. We currently distribute 3 different types of products across Europe. So first of all, the classic medical cannabis product, which is flowers. Secondly, we also have extracts, and then the final thing are soft gel capsules, which are currently limited to Denmark. Yeah. So next, where does our cannabis actually come from? So for the European market, it only comes from EU GMP certified facilities. One of them is in Canada, Aurora River, but we have been shifting our production to our Danish facility, Aurora Nordic, since last year, and we're also in the process of constructing 1 facility in Germany. The cannabis that is being delivered through the French pilot program comes from Denmark, so our main facility in Europe. It's called Aurora Nordic, and it has a capacity of 10 tons of cannabis per year, so that's what they can produce. That's approximately as much as the entire European medical cannabis market is big today. So it's not fully, we're not using the full capacity, but the market is growing quite rapidly, and in a few years we will be using the full capacity. The plant was completed in 2018. It was repurposed from a tomato greenhouse, and it took around 2 years to get fully certified, to get the GMP certification, and then we had the first export to Germany in November. This transition from Canada to having a facility in Europe actually allows us 2 things. So first of all, to have shorter supply chains and therefore better logistics, something that has become really evident, especially with Corona, to be important. So before, when we were importing our products from Canada, the lead times now significantly increased because of Corona, because the authorities were working remotely, etc. The second benefit of actually having a facility in Europe is that we can ensure that patients have a lot more reliability with their supply of products. Yeah. So that was it for Aurora. I don't want to brainwash you too much with a company presentation. In the end, it's about France, right? But I want to go into a little bit more detail around the different legal and regulatory jurisdictions across Europe. So I've split it here into 3 different parts. So first of all, the classic model that you see in Germany, the most developed market, is the quite liberal model where imports are allowed, and there aren't really any restrictions on necessarily indications or the number of patients. Yeah. So we see that some of the classic markets like Germany, UK, and Italy are in that segment. The second segment is limited to the Netherlands currently in Europe. So medical cannabis is legal, but it's not allowed to import any cannabis. So it's limited to domestic production. And the third category here is pilot programs and trial schemes. So we have currently 2 countries which have those in place, Denmark, and the second one is France, which I'm going to talk about in more detail. The Danish trial scheme has been running since 2021, and it covers 3 different products: flowers, extracts, and soft gel capsules. And they also have reimbursement in place. So for palliative care patients, they cover 100% of the reimbursement, and for other patients, 50% up to a certain limit per year. Is there anything else that I wanted to mention about Denmark? No, I think that's it. So yeah, let's talk about the French pilot program. To first give you a little bit of context how it evolved. So in 2019, the French authorities first indicated that they want to run a medical cannabis pilot program. And then approximately 1 year later, they actually published the specifications that are going to be necessary for companies to apply. So that was in September 2020 or in October 2020. And then Aurora and Etipharm, which is a French pharma company, we entered into an agreement to partner together on this initiative. We then applied in November, December 2020, submitted our dossiers. So dossier is a collation of the different application materials. So you have it outlined on the left side what was necessary to detail in these dossiers. So it's quite extensive. It was a document of around 600 to 700 pages. And after these dossiers were submitted, the authorities went back and reviewed all of the applicants. And then in the end, in January, the winners were announced. So it was us for all of the flower lots. We secured 3 of the flower lots together with Etipharm. And then the lots were split between Tilray and Little Green Pharma. And the final lots for pills were split, were just for Panaxia, an Israeli company. Is there anything else for me to mention? So we've done our first import in April, and the authorities have tested our samples already, so they're in spec. There have been some issues with some of our competitors in the extract market. There have been some product recalls which have been public, but there have not been any issues with the product quality per se. It was just something with the packaging. The really interesting question now is like, what is going to happen after this 2-year period of the pilot program? Obviously, that's a really big question from a medical point of view for patients, but also from a commercial view for us as companies. Currently, we're in this program with the expectation that the market is going to generalize, so it's going to become an open market, and that we are going to be able to continue our work there. In a bit more detail about the French cannabis program, so I already mentioned the duration is 2 years. The objective is to assess the distribution of medical cannabis and have it as a trial period, and then to assess whether that's going to work. In countries where they've had similar trial schemes or pilot programs, these have never resulted in a negative outcome, like in Denmark, for example. The pilot program is limited to a certain number of patients, so to 3,000 patients, and they are split, these 3,000 patients, across different categories. So we have pain, we have MS, we have palliative patients, oncology, and epilepsy. And also the different products that are being used for those indications are also matched. So for example, an epileptic patient, you typically wouldn't treat with THC, but you would treat that patient with CBD. The 3 different products that I already mentioned are flowers, oils, and capsules. Yeah, and the whole program is run by the ANSM, an agency that oversees medical safety and health products in France. Yeah. I think that's it for this slide. Yeah. So, why are we talking about this French pilot program? Like, why is it unique? Why is it interesting? What is different to other markets? First of all, the really big aspect, and I'm also going to talk about in a little bit more detail later, is the education program for doctors. So every doctor who wants to prescribe and every pharmacist who wants to distribute and dispense medical cannabis products need to undertake training that has been developed by the ANSM, the authority that I mentioned before. The second really interesting point is that all of the products are currently being distributed for free. So we as a company and all of the other companies that are participating, we're doing this at our own cost, and patients don't have to pay for any of the products. The third really interesting aspect is that in contrast to other countries, we were required, participating supplier was required to present a part prior to submitting the dossier with a pharmaceutical establishment located in France. So this is in our case Etipharm, and yeah. Actually, one more thing here. What is quite interesting, I mean, it's not unique to the French pilot program, but for example, in contrast to here, to Germany, in Germany, medical cannabis products are sold as APIs, so active pharmaceutical ingredients. They are sold to pharmacies, and pharmacies then have to do a final step with products. So, for example, with flowers, it could be refilling them or grinding them. With it would be refilling them from bigger packaging into smaller packaging, stuff like that. In France, it's different. It's similar to the UK, where medical cannabis products are being sold as finished products. So that is different to Germany, for example. Next, so where are we now at this moment in France? So the really big stone, kind of milestone for us, was the partnership agreement with Etipharm. Quick introduction to Etipharm. Who are they? They're a big pharmaceutical company from France. They cover two main areas, which are one of the main reasons why we covered with them. First of all, they look after patients who have diseases with the central nervous system, and secondly, patients who are in critical care. Yeah, their geographic footprint is they have direct sales and direct distribution in Europe and in China, and they have partnerships in the Middle East and in North America. When we look at this pilot program and our agreement with them, Aurora covers the cultivation, and then also the second aspect is the manufacturing and the logistics to France, and then Etipharm covers two other areas. So first of all, the distribution in France across these products, so that also includes the dom-toms, like the areas outside of France, like Guadeloupe, Martinique, and Réunion. And then they also look after the second point, pharmacovigilance, so if there are any issues with the products. Yeah. The second point here is we're responsible for the entire supply of medical cannabis flowers. So as I mentioned before, we won all of the 3 lots for supplying medical cannabis flowers. So these are high THC balanced and high CBD. We have completed our first shipment. I also talked about this. And the fourth point is quite interesting. So while the other companies in the extracts and capsule segments have already distributed the products, our product, the administration, so the use of medical cannabis flowers, is limited in France to use with vaporizers, and that vaporizer is currently being concluded by the authorities. So we're just waiting for the outcome of that, and then which is likely going to happen in July, and then we can start with the distribution actually in France. To date, more than 300 patients have been recruited into the program. So the last figure, I think, from last week was around 350 patients. So we still have some room to go, approximately 10-15% right now of the capacity, and already hundreds of doctors have been trained. Yeah. The next thing I'm going to talk about are the opportunities and challenges. So if we look at the different stakeholders that are involved, so obviously for patients, this program is going to allow a lot of patients that didn't have access to the relevant medication that they needed. Now they're going to have access to this. It's obviously the main point here. The second one, which I'm going to talk about after this slide, is the education program that the authorities have developed. So this is really unique to this program and the most formal and most progressive educational program that the authorities have developed. And the third thing that I also already mentioned was in 2023, so after the 2 years of the pilot program, when it ends, what is actually going to happen, and it poses a really big opportunity for patients, so from a medical point of view, but also for us as a company from a commercial point of view. Yeah. The challenges for us are at the moment that the pilot program might go a little bit slower than expected, and that we might reach less patients than expected, but currently we're optimistic that that shouldn't be an issue. The second thing, is around these 3,000 patients, that the pilot program is limited to those 3,000 patients. So some patients who either are above those 3,000 patients or who are outside of the 5 indications that I mentioned, they will still have to revert back to the black market if they require access to cannabis but cannot get it through the pilot program. And the final thing is here, again, for this post-pilot period, we have no clue at the moment what is going to happen. Are they going to extend the pilot program? Are they going to revert the whole legislation, make medical cannabis illegal again, or are they going to open it and make it an open market? But at the moment we have no clue about market access, we have no clue about pricing from 2023 onwards, and also for patients there is no indication of reimbursement, which is obviously a big aspect. Yeah. And then the final thing that I'm going to talk about today is this educational program that I mentioned. So why is this so special? It's because it's really, before in other countries and our jurisdictions, you haven't really seen such a formalized nationally harmonized program. So every prescriber and every pharmacist that wants to work with medical cannabis, they have to go through this program, and only prescribers, so doctors from authorized medical centers, can actually do this. The physicians and the doctors have to apply for this program, for this educational program, and then have to do it. In terms of the content, it's around 13 chapters, and it covers everything cannabinoid system to regulation, but also the aspects around administration, and then also pharmacovigilance and the indications what to use it for. Yeah. It takes around 3 hours to complete the whole training, and you also have to, as a participant, you have to do some of the tests and quizzes, which are quite practical, you could say. Like, you have to do some quizzes that are based on clinical cases. And what's also interesting is that the training goes actually quite into a lot of detail, so it's quite specific about the types of products and medical cannabis products they're supposed to prescribe for what indication. So the training outlines that they should start with CBD products, and then if they don't work, then go ahead with a balanced product or with a high THC product, and then, for example, only use flower products in conjunction with oils, things like that. Yeah, I think that's it from my side. So if you have any further questions, feel free to reach out to me, and otherwise I would open the floor for some questions.